Well, it's very much a historical saying. I mean, the whole saying is go away in May, don't come back till St Leger's Day,
yeah.
which is an old British brokers aspect where they didn't really come back until the last horse races in London. And if you look at the markets, that's basically September.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And it's very old school and very, very, very historical. But if you look at the markets, it's post-September. October is really when we've had the big historical league downs. I mean, 1929, 2008, and even 97. They were all in October. So the whole we're not very shall we say gazing at the stars in relation to sayings and so forth. But if you look at the technicals, obviously summer volumes do drop off, but it really looks a lot more like the post-September aspect is where you get a lot more volatility in the action.
Yeah. No, I remember this term from the days when I was a lad in primary school. You know, and May was an exciting time because we were about to break and say goodbye to our friends for the entire summer. It wasn't until September, you know, that school started getting going again. I mean, summers lasted forever at that time. It was like the world kind of stopped. You know, it was kind of like a throwback to those times. But boy, have these times ever changed. So I got your note this morning. Boy, I have to say, number one, you're a trooper. I mean, before you even coming to guest host with me on the show here, you go to the office and punch it out and bang out everything. The yen, Japan, the Nikkei tanked almost 4% yesterday. The yen at 106. Problem after problem after problem. I don't know if it's good that they're off for 3 days. They're actually closed for 3 days for national holidays. This is when the selling momentum can really, really build up in a market that gets closed if things go the wrong direction.
Well, true. I mean, obviously the BOJ caught most people off guard last week. I mean, us included. But we think the big problem at the moment is more the prudence. I mean, between the fiscal side of the equation and the monetary side of the equation, where obviously the recent earthquakes that we've just had in Japan has really thrown a spanner in the works in relation to Abe front-loading his budget, where he's basically saying 80% is being front-loaded. He said that in the Diet a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, the issue is that we already knew that there would have to be some form of a supplementary budget to come later in the year, but he was doing that to try and stoke economic growth and GDP, whereas obviously this earthquake, some of the reports we're seeing on the street is, you know, maybe 1.2% of GDP being written off. So, you know, there really is now a strong case for a supplementary budget. There's also a strong case for a stimulus budget, but it also means that from a fiscal prudence point of view, there could even be a delay on the sales tax increase, which kind of puts pressure in relation to the underlying aspect for Japan, which is sovereign rating and JGBs. So you've got Kuroda that's being kind of painted into a corner where he's being asked to continue to expand the money base, but there's also concerns in relation to the BOJ's balance sheet because of his delays, and that's kind of hitting sentiment. So it's a double-edged sword at the moment, and I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, nearly a quarter of the tax revenue goes in servicing government debt. So there's a really fine balancing act at the moment in relation to prudence on the fiscal and obviously the monetary side. There isn't at the moment because the BOJ's got a mandate for 80 trillion purchases.
What's changed between, you know, before this story, before we got to this point, this chapter in the story, there was a time when we were dealing with the yen. You'll remember this in the 80s, 90s, that sort of thing, and we still got through it, right? We still got ahead in life and all that. I mean, Japan was certainly not talked about with the excitement that's been talked about in the last couple of years, but we had a period of time when people were being forced to budget with a 2-digit yen versus the dollar. What's the difference between then and now? And why, you know, is all the writing, is all the writing about, oh my God, look how much these companies are going to lose, you know, at this rate if we, you know, if the yen stays at 105, 106, where it is right now?
Well, I mean, I remember seeing you in the Princes of the Yen documentary, which was very much 80s and 90s. But 90s, I was lucky enough to see the floor in Melbourne when the stock exchange was still open. That was when I just started in the industry. But you're true. I mean, it was only 4 years ago that the yen was at 80. So you had Sakakibara, Mr. Yen, come out a couple of months ago and say that even at the 100 handle, the Japan Inc. will still be making money. So you've got to put things in perspective that we've had such a sharp depreciation, thanks again to Abenomics and the BOJ's balance sheet action. But Japan Inc. itself is still basically very much looking like they still will be profitable and making money up until at least the 100 handle, if not a little stronger than that. But one of the major problems, I think, with Japan is that they haven't taken the opportunity to do the structural changes, and hence your comment just prior about the third arrow, which we call the unicorn arrow, often spoke about, hardly ever seen. So.